The grand hall of the Celestial Forum gleamed with light from 1,000 worlds. Delegates from across the galaxy gathered beneath the crystalline dome, their varied forms creating a tapestry of colors and shapes. Today marked a special occasion, the 100th anniversary of Earth's destruction. High Commander Vex Thul stood at the central podium, his scaled reptilian body wrapped in ceremonial armor. The Zelthark leader raised his clawed hands, and the crowd fell silent. His voice boomed through translators, reaching every corner of the massive chamber. 100 years ago, we eliminated a threat to galactic peace, Vex Thul announced. The humans were dangerous. They bred too quickly. They learned too fast. They reached for the stars with greedy hands. We did what was necessary. Holographic displays flickered to life around the hall, showing Earth as it once was: blue oceans, green continents, white clouds. Then came the footage the Zelthark had broadcast to every civilized world a century ago. Zelthark warships surrounded the small planet. Beams of terrible energy lanced downward. Continents cracked. Oceans boiled. The atmosphere ignited. Within hours, Earth became a blackened, lifeless rock. Many delegates looked away. Some shifted uncomfortably. But none protested. They had all been there, in spirit if not in body, when the Zelthark demanded the galaxy's blessing for their attack. They had all remained silent. Ambassador Kira Minjun sat in the Etherian Collective's designated section, her insectoid features impossible to read for most species. But inside, guilt gnawed at her like acid. Her people were peaceful, philosophers and artists. They prided themselves on wisdom and patience. Yet when the Zelthark brought evidence of humanity's aggressive expansion and dangerous potential, the Etherians had voted with the majority. Better one species dies than risk galactic war, they had reasoned. Kira remembered the human ambassador she had briefly met at a trade conference, years before the attack. Park something she could not recall the full name. The human woman had been so alive, so full of energy and ideas. She spoke of art and music, of scientific discoveries, and dreams of peaceful exploration. She had shown Kira pictures of her homeworld, of cities that touched the sky, and forests that stretched beyond horizons. All gone now. All ashes and dust. Let this anniversary remind us, Vex Thul continued, that the Zelthark Dominion protects this galaxy from chaos. Let it remind us that difficult decisions must be made for the greater good. The applause that followed was polite but not enthusiastic. Most species viewed the Zelthark with fear rather than admiration. Their empire was built on conquest and intimidation, but they were strong, and strength commanded respect in the galactic community. As the ceremony continued with speeches from various delegates, each offering their perspective on that dark chapter of history, Kira felt increasingly ill. She excused herself and made her way to the observation deck, needing to see actual stars instead of political theater. The deck was nearly empty. Kira stood before the massive transparent wall, gazing out at the glittering expanse of space. Somewhere out there, in a remote arm of the galaxy, a dead world circled a yellow star. A grave for billions. Beautiful, is it not? A voice said behind her. Kira turned to find a Zelthark junior officer, much younger than Vex Thul. His scales were brighter green, not yet dulled by age. The stars? Kira asked. All of it. The peace we have maintained. The order. The young Zelthark stepped beside her. My hatching father served on one of the ships that cleansed Earth. He told me stories. The humans fought hard, even though they knew they could not win. They launched everything. They had primitive nuclear weapons, kinetic missiles, even ships loaded with explosives sent on suicide runs. None of it mattered. Why are you telling me this? Kira asked quietly. Because I see doubt in your movements, Ambassador. Many species harbor sympathy for the humans, but they were too dangerous to leave alive. My hatching father said their rate of technological advancement was unprecedented. In just 2 centuries, they went from crude flying machines to faster-than-light travel. Another century, and they might have matched our weapons. Another 2, and they might have surpassed us. So you killed them for what they might become? The young officer's eyes narrowed. We killed them because the strong must control the weak. That is the natural order. Before Kira could respond, alarms suddenly blared throughout the station. The observation deck's lights shifted to emergency red. The young Zelthark officer grabbed a communication device from his belt. Report, he snapped. A panicked voice responded in the Zelthark language. Kira's translator rendered it. Massive gravitational distortions detected at the system's edge. Unknown signatures. Multiple contacts. No transponder signals. The officer's scales paled slightly. How many? Scanning now. Wait. Contacts are. They are gone. Disappeared. Sensors show nothing now. Explain, the officer demanded. I cannot, sir. They were there, then they were not. Like ghosts. The alarm stopped. Normal lighting returned. For a long moment, the young Zelthark stared at his communication device. Then, at Kira. Sensor malfunction, he said. But his voice lacked confidence. Old equipment. The forum station is due for upgrades. Kira said nothing. She looked back out at the stars, and for the first time in 100 years, she felt something strange. Hope, perhaps. Or fear. Maybe both. The officer left quickly. Kira remained on the observation deck for another hour, watching the darkness between stars. The sensors had detected something. She was certain of that, and equally certain that it was not a malfunction. When she finally returned to the ceremony hall, Vex Thul was concluding his speech with a pledge. The Zelthark Dominion would continue to protect galactic civilization from all threats, known and unknown. The delegates applauded dutifully, but Kira noticed something she had never seen before. Some of the Zelthark guards stationed around the hall were whispering to each other, their body language tense. Word of the sensor readings had spread, and though Vex Thul projected confidence, Kira detected the slightest hesitation in his movements. That night, unable to sleep in her assigned quarters, Kira accessed the public databases. She searched for information about Earth, about humanity, about that terrible day 100 years ago. Most files were heavily redacted or sealed by Zelthark security protocols, but she found scattered references, fragments of data. One file caught her attention. It was an after-action report from a Zelthark patrol ship. Dated just 2 years after Earth's destruction, the ship had encountered a human vessel in deep space, far from any settled systems. The humans had fought desperately, and the Zelthark had destroyed them. But the report noted something odd. The human ship had been designed for long-range travel, packed with civilians and supplies. A colony ship. Kira searched for more such reports. She found 3 more, spread across 50 years. Each time, Zelthark patrols had found human refugee vessels and destroyed them. Each time, the reports were classified within days of filing. The humans had not all died on Earth. Some had escaped. And if some had escaped, then perhaps. Kira closed her terminal and sat in darkness, her mind racing. The sensor readings from today. The gravitational distortions. The ghost contacts that appeared and vanished. She thought of the young Zelthark officer's words. The humans fought hard, even though they knew they could not win. But what if some of them had survived? What if they had spent 100 years in hiding, licking their wounds, growing stronger? What if they had finally come back? Kira shivered despite the comfortable temperature of her quarters. The galaxy had spent a century celebrating humanity's extinction and the Zelthark's power. But perhaps the celebration was premature. Perhaps something was watching from the darkness between stars, patient and angry, waiting for the right moment to remind the galaxy of its greatest sin. The first colony to go silent was Zelthark Outpost 7, a mining world on the edge of Dominion space. At first, High Command assumed equipment failure. Communication arrays broke down all the time on remote worlds. They dispatched a repair ship and thought nothing more of it. The repair ship never reported back. 2 weeks later, a trading vessel passing through the system found Outpost 7 intact but empty. The mines were abandoned mid-shift. With equipment still running, the habitation domes showed no signs of damage from the outside. But inside, the Zelthark colonists were gone. All 3,000 of them. The trading vessel's captain was a cautious Vrelin, a species known for thorough documentation. She recorded everything before leaving the system. Her footage showed dining halls with half-eaten meals on tables, sleeping quarters with beds still warm, control centers with stations active and unmanned, and in the central plaza, something new, a holographic projector that should not have been there. When activated, it showed a single image: Earth burning. Then a human hand appeared in frame, drawing one finger across a throat in an unmistakable gesture. The footage reached the Celestial Forum within days. The galactic community erupted into panic. Impossible, Vexthul declared before the assembled delegates. The humans are extinct. This is a hoax, designed to undermine Zelthark authority. We will investigate and find the perpetrators. But Kira, watching from the Etherean section, saw something in the High Commander's eyes. Fear. Ambassador Kira returned to her office and immediately requested all available data on recent Zelthark activities. Her government, sensing something significant, granted her expanded access to intelligence files. What she found made her blood run cold. Outpost 7 was not the first disappearance. Over the past 6 months, 5 Zelthark ships had vanished without trace. Each time, High Command had attributed it to pirates or mechanical failure. But there was a pattern. All disappearances occurred in remote regions. All involved military or colonial vessels. And in each case, nearby sensor buoys recorded the same strange readings before going offline: massive gravitational distortions, identical to what the forum station detected on the anniversary. Kira compiled her findings and presented them to the Etherean Council. They listened, with growing alarm. "You believe humanity survived?" asked Council Elder Zixthan, his ancient compound eyes reflecting worry. "I believe something is targeting the Zelthark," Kira replied. "Something with advanced technology and intimate knowledge of Zelthark patrol patterns. Something that wants the galaxy to know Earth has not been forgotten." "This changes everything," another council member said. "If humans survived and developed such capabilities, then we stood by while the Zelthark tried to exterminate a species that might now be more powerful than any of us." Kira finished. The council authorized her to continue investigating, but quietly. If humanity had truly returned seeking revenge, the Etherians did not want to be seen as enemies. Meanwhile, the attacks accelerated. Zelthark Colony 12 reported ships appearing from nowhere, striking with devastating precision, then vanishing before defense forces could respond. Survivors described vessels unlike anything in known databases: sleek, dark, bristling with weapons that tore through Zelthark shields like paper. The attackers never communicated, never demanded surrender. They simply struck and disappeared, leaving only that same holographic message: Earth burning. The slashing gesture. High Commander Vexthul ordered a full military alert. 1/3 of the Zelthark fleet mobilized to patrol vulnerable colonies. But the attacks continued. Always, where the fleet was not. The invisible enemy seemed to know Zelthark positions before they arrived. "They are playing with us," Admiral Korveth reported to Vexthul in a private meeting. Kira had obtained a recording through intelligence channels. They could strike the homeworld if they wished, but they choose to bleed us slowly, to terrify us. "Then we will show them Zelthark strength," Vexthul snarled. "We destroyed them once. We will do so again." But even Vexthul's confidence seemed forced. The recordings showed him pacing, his scales dull with stress. He knew what Korveth knew. What Kira knew: the Zelthark were facing an enemy that outmatched them in every way. Kira received a classified file from an anonymous source within Zelthark Intelligence. She almost deleted it, fearing a trap. But curiosity won. She opened it in a secure, isolated system. The file contained decades of reports, all stamped with the highest security classifications. Reports of human refugee ships, detected and destroyed. 37 separate incidents, spanning 70 years. The last confirmed kill was dated 28 years ago, a small human vessel that fought back with surprising effectiveness before being overwhelmed. But there was a notation at the bottom of that final report. Vessel used unknown propulsion system. Technology far beyond previously documented human capabilities. Recommend increased patrols in sector. Multiple other vessels may have escaped. Kira read the words again and again. 28 years ago, the humans already had technology beyond their previous level. What had they developed in the decades since? Where had they been hiding? How many had survived? The galaxy was about to find out. 3 months after the first disappearances, every sensor array from the galactic core to the outer rim detected the same thing simultaneously. Massive gravitational signatures, hundreds of them, all appearing at once in Zelthark space. Not attacking, not hiding. Just there, announcing their presence. The Zelthark fleet scrambled to respond. But by the time they arrived at various locations, the signatures had vanished. Except for one. The largest signature remained. Positioned precisely at the edge of Zelthark Prime's system, the Dominion homeworld itself. Kira watched the sensor feeds from the forum station along with representatives from every major civilization. The gravity well was enormous, suggesting a ship of unprecedented size. For 6 hours, it simply sat there, doing nothing, waiting. Then it decloaked. The holographic display showed a vessel that dwarfed anything in the known galaxy. It was dark as space itself, its hull covered in what looked like battle scars from 100 conflicts. Weapon ports bristled along every surface. And on its bow, in letters that blazed with light, a single word in the human language. Remembrance. By the ancestors, Elder Zix, then whispered beside Kira. As they watched, more ships decloaked around Zelthark Prime. Dozens, then hundreds. Each one massive, each one armed, each one bearing names in the human language. Vengeance, justice, defiance. Unbroken. The Zelthark defense fleet seemed tiny by comparison, toys facing titans. A transmission suddenly broadcast on all frequencies, in every known language. The voice was human, female, and utterly cold. 100 years ago, you murdered our world. You killed our people. You hunted our refugees across the stars. You thought you erased us. A pause. You were wrong. The transmission ended. The human fleet held position. Weapons powered, but not firing. Waiting, again. Kira realized she was shaking. The galaxy had awakened something terrible. The humans had not just survived. They had evolved, adapted, grown strong in the darkness. And now they had returned. The celebration was over. The reckoning had begun. In her quarters that night, Kira pulled up every file she had on that long-ago human ambassador. Park was the family name. She had been young then, full of hope for humanity's future among the stars. Kira wondered if that woman had survived. Wondered if she was out there now, commanding one of those terrible ships. Wondered if there was any mercy left in humanity's heart, or if the galaxy had burned it all away 100 years ago. Admiral Park Ji-woo stood on the bridge of the Remembrance, her hands clasped behind her back, watching the Zelthark homeworld rotate slowly on the main display. She was 73 years old, but the cold sleep between missions kept her body strong. Her mind, however, carried all 73 years of memory. Every moment, every loss. Status, she said quietly. All ships in position, replied Commander Chen Hae-won from the tactical station. Zelthark Defense Fleet is maintaining defensive formation around the planet. They have not powered weapons, but their shields are at maximum. They are afraid, noted Colonel Lee Sung-min, Park's second in command. Let them taste what our grandparents felt. Park said nothing. She remembered Earth, though she had been only 7 years old when the bombardment began. Her parents had worked at the Seoul spaceport, processing cargo for the colony ships that humanity was building. When the Zelthark fleet appeared in Earth's orbit, her father had thrown her and her mother onto the last ship to launch a half-finished colony vessel called the Exodus. She still remembered his face through the viewport, smiling even as the world burned behind him, trying to make her believe everything would be okay. 50,000 humans escaped Earth that day, across 7 ships. Only 43,000 survived the first year in deep space, as they fled into the unexplored regions of the galaxy, constantly running from Zelthark hunters. Park had grown up in the cold corridors of the Exodus, learning to read on datapads that taught both literacy and survival. She was 12 when the Zelthark found them and destroyed 2 of the refugee ships, killing 18,000 people. She was 25 when she entered officer training in the hidden shipyard the survivors had built inside a massive asteroid. She was 40 when she took command of humanity's first true warship, built with technology salvaged from a dozen different species and improved by desperate innovation. Now, at 73, she commanded a fleet that could crack worlds. Open communication, Park ordered. All frequencies. I want every species in the galaxy to hear this. The communication officer nodded. Channel open, Admiral. The entire galaxy is listening. Park took a breath. This moment had been 100 years in the making. I am Admiral Park Ji-woo, of the Human Remnant Fleet. 100 years ago, the Zelthark Dominion bombarded Earth, killing 11 billion people. They did this with the silent approval of the galactic community. They did this because they feared humanity's potential. They did this because the strong believed they could eliminate the weak without consequence. She paused, letting the words sink in across 1,000 worlds. But the Zelthark lied to you all. They told you Earth was a threat. They told you humans were dangerous. They never told you the complete truth. Display the records. Display the records. The Remembrance's computers transmitted data packets to every major network in the galaxy. Files that humanity had spent decades acquiring through raids, hacks, and captured ships. Files that the Zelthark had buried under maximum security. The records showed Zelthark conquest across 2,000 years. Species after species, wiped from existence. Not just defeated, completely exterminated. The Vorthians, whose crime was possessing valuable mineral-rich worlds. The Kasali, who refused to submit to Zelthark trade demands. The Planari, who committed the sin of being pacifists with no ability to defend themselves. 6 complete extinctions before Earth. 6 entire civilizations erased. And in each case, the Zelthark had convinced the galaxy that it was necessary, justified, or simply not their concern. Earth was not the first. Park continued. We were just the most recent. And you all stood by, believing the Zelthark lies, because it was easier than confronting genocide. On the forum station, Kira watched with tears streaming down her face. The files were genuine. She accessed the Etherian verification systems and confirmed it. Her people had known about at least 2 of the previous extinctions. They had done nothing. The shame was overwhelming. Park's voice cut through the silence like a blade. I stand before you today with a choice. I can bombard Zelthark Prime just as they bombarded Earth. I can exterminate them as they exterminated us. I have the weapons. I have the justification. An eye for an eye. As humans once said, the Zelthark defense fleet suddenly powered weapons. On the Remembrance's bridge, alarms sounded. They are preparing to fire, Chen reported. Let them, Park said calmly. I am not finished. But Admiral, I said let them. The Zelthark fleet opened fire, pouring everything they had at the human vessels. Missiles, energy weapons, kinetic rounds, a devastating barrage that would have destroyed any conventional fleet. The human shields held easily. Not a single ship took damage. The disparity was shocking, terrible to witness. 100 years of advancement, driven by survival necessity, had put humanity decades beyond any galactic species. When the Zelthark barrage finally stopped, exhausted, Park continued as if nothing had happened. I could kill you all. But I am going to make a different choice. I demand that High Commander Vex Thul and the entire Zelthark High Command surrender themselves for trial, not to humanity alone, but to a galactic court representing all species. Let them face justice for their crimes against sapient life. In the Celestial Forum, the delegates erupted into chaos. Some cheered. Others protested. The Zelthark delegation sat in stunned silence. Ambassador Kira rose from her seat. Her hands shook, but her voice was steady as she activated her communication link. I am Ambassador Kira Minjun of the Etherian Collective. I speak without authorization from my government, but I speak with the authority of conscience. Admiral Park is correct. We stood by while the Zelthark committed genocide. We are complicit in these crimes. The Etherian Collective formally supports humanity's demand for justice. A long silence followed. Then, one by one, other ambassadors stood. The Vrellans, the Sikathi, even the Morphians, who had been Zelthark allies for centuries. Within an hour, 47 species had formally demanded the Zelthark leadership surrender for trial. On Zelthark Prime, Vex Thul watched the galaxy turn against him. He activated his private communication channel to Admiral Park. You want me to surrender? His voice dripped venom. You want me to submit to judgment by inferior species? Never. If you want justice, human, you will have to take it. Bombard our world. Prove you are no better than us. Park closed her eyes. For a moment, she was 7 years old again, watching her father smile as the world ended. She felt that old rage, burning as bright as the day Earth died. Colonel Lee stepped beside her. Give the order, Admiral. Burn their world. They would show us no mercy. They showed Earth no mercy. Target their shields, Park said quietly. All weapons. Prepare to fire. The human fleet's weapons charged, energy building to catastrophic levels. On every ship, human crew members, all of them, descendants of Earth, all of them carrying inherited trauma, waited for the order to unleash hell. Park's finger hovered over the command pad. One press. One moment. Justice for 11 billion dead. But justice was not the same as revenge. Hold fire, Park said. Admiral? Lee stared at her in disbelief. I said, hold fire. Park opened a new communication channel, broadcasting again to the entire galaxy. High Commander Vex Thul refuses to surrender. He believes we will not fire on his world. He believes we are bluffing. He is wrong. She targeted one of Zelthark Prime's moons, uninhabited but visible from the planet's surface. Demonstration pattern. 20% power. Fire. The Remembrance's main weapon lanced out, a beam of concentrated energy that would have looked at home in a star's heart. It struck the moon and carved a canyon across its surface, visible from the planet below. A scar that would remain for millennia. A reminder of what could have been. That was 20% power, High Commander. This fleet can turn your homeworld into vapor. But we will not. We are not like you. We are better than you. And we will prove it. Park took a breath and played her final move. You have 1 hour to surrender your leadership for trial, or I will begin destroying your military infrastructure. Not your cities, not your civilians, your shipyards, your weapon platforms, your fleet. Everything you use to threaten other species. We will disarm you completely, leaving you defenseless in a galaxy that now knows your true nature. Then we will let your own people decide what to do with you. The channel closed. The human fleet waited. On Zelthark Prime, something unexpected happened. The people, who had watched humanity's demonstration and heard Park's words, began to fill the streets. The streets of Zelthark Prime's capital city had never seen anything like it. Millions of Zelthark citizens poured from their homes, their scales reflecting the light of 3 moons, one now bearing a massive scar. They marched toward the High Command building, their voices raised in anger, demanding answers. For generations, the Zelthark people had been told they were superior, that their conquests were justified, that the species they destroyed were threats to galactic peace. They had believed it because questioning the High Command meant punishment, exile, or death. But now, with human weapons pointed at their world and the truth exposed for all to see, fear and rage overwhelmed caution. Inside the High Command building, Vex's Thul watched the crowds through security monitors. His scales had turned a sickly pale color. "Disperse them," he ordered his guards. "Sir, there are too many. If we use force, it could become a full uprising. Then call in the military." "Sir, the military is watching too. Some units are refusing to move against civilians." Vex Thul's claws scraped against his desk. Everything was falling apart. 100 years of carefully maintained power, crumbling in a single day because one species refused to stay dead. On the Remembrance, Admiral Park monitored the situation. Her tactical officers provided constant updates. "The Zelthark fleet is holding position," Chen reported. "But their formation is breaking down. Some ships are moving away from defensive positions. I think their crews are confused about what to do." Colonel Lee stood at Park's side, his face tight with barely contained emotion. "Admiral, we have them. The Zelthark are paralyzed. But we need to act while we have the advantage. If we wait, they might reorganize, might find some way to turn this around." "You want me to fire," Park said quietly. "I want justice for Earth, real justice. The kind that ensures the Zelthark never threaten anyone again." Park turned to face her second-in-command. Lee was 45 years old, born on the Exodus, 28 years after Earth's fall. He had never seen humanity's homeworld except in recordings. His parents had been killed when he was 12, during a Zelthark ambush that destroyed one of the supply ships. He had every reason to hate. "What does real justice look like to you, Colonel?" Park asked. "A dead enemy. An enemy that cannot hurt us again. 11 billion Zelthark civilians. You want to kill them all? They would have killed us all. They tried to kill us all. Yes, they did. And it was wrong when they did it. How does it become right when we do it?" Lee's jaw tightened. "Because we are the victims. We have the right to protect ourselves, to ensure this never happens again. By becoming genocidal ourselves? By proving the Zelthark were right to fear us? They were not right about anything." Lee's voice rose, and several bridge officers glanced over. "They were murderers. Cowards. They destroyed Earth because they were afraid of what humanity might become. Well, here we are, Admiral. We became strong. We became deadly. Let us show them the consequences of their fear." End quote. End quote. Also, end quote. End quote. Park stepped closer to Lee, speaking softly but firmly. "I understand your anger. I share it. Every day, I wake up remembering my father pushing me onto that ship. Every day. I remember the smell of burning atmosphere, the sound of 11 billion people screaming. It never goes away, Colonel. Never." "Then how can you hesitate?" "Because my father did not push me onto that ship so I could grow up to become a mass murderer. He saved me because he believed humanity was worth saving. All of humanity. The good and the bad, the strong and the weak, the merciful and the angry." Park gestured toward the viewport, toward the scarred moon and the Zelthark homeworld below. "If we burn their world, we prove we are just what they feared. Dangerous, uncontrollable, evil. We are not evil," Lee protested. "Then prove it." Prove humanity is better than the Zelthark. Prove we can seek justice without becoming monsters ourselves. Before Lee could respond, a communication alert chimed. It was from the surface of Zelthark Prime. Ambassador Kira's face appeared on the display, speaking from the Celestial Forum. Admiral Park, the Forum has received a transmission from Zelthark Prime. The people have breached the High Command building. They are dragging their leaders out into the streets. They are asking what they should do. Park felt her heart pound. This was the moment. The choice that would define humanity's return to the galaxy. She could order the Zelthark people to execute their leaders themselves, to tear them apart in rage. Justice through mob violence. The galaxy might even approve, given the revelations about the Zelthark's crimes. Or she could show them all something different. Commander Chen, prepare a shuttle. I am going down to the surface. The bridge erupted in protests. Lee grabbed her arm. Admiral, you cannot. It is a trap. The Zelthark will kill you the moment you step off that shuttle. Then they will kill me. But I will not order the destruction of a civilization from orbit. If I am going to decide their fate, I will do it, face to face. This is insanity. This is leadership. Park gently removed Lee's hand from her arm. You have command of the fleet while I am gone, Colonel. If anything happens to me, you are authorized to destroy military targets only. No civilian infrastructure, no cities. Do you understand? Lee's face twisted with anguish. I understand, sir. Park took a shuttle with a minimal escort, just 4 human Marines. As they descended through Zelthark Prime's atmosphere, she thought about her father's smile, his certainty that she would live, that she would matter. She hoped he would be proud of what she was about to do. The shuttle landed in the central plaza, outside the High Command building. The moment the ramp lowered, Park found herself facing hundreds of thousands of Zelthark civilians. They had formed a corridor leading to the building's entrance, where Vex Thal and 6 other High Command members were being held by their own guards. Ambassador Kira ran to meet Park, her insectoid features displaying clear worry. Admiral, thank the ancestors you came. The situation is volatile. The people want justice, but they do not know what that means anymore. They are about to learn, Park said. She walked up the corridor, her Marines flanking her, their weapons ready but pointed down. The Zelthark crowds watched in silence, these towering reptilian beings staring at the small human woman who held their entire world hostage. Park stopped in front of Vex Thal. The High Commander was bound with restraints, his ceremonial armor stripped away, leaving only plain scales. He looked old, suddenly, and small. You came yourself, Vex Thal said, his voice hoarse. Did you come to execute me personally? I came to offer you something you never offered Earth, Park replied. A trial. A chance to speak. A chance for justice instead of slaughter. Justice? Vex Thal laughed bitterly. Your justice will be a show trial. You have already decided I am guilty. You are guilty. The evidence is overwhelming. But you will still get a trial because that is how civilized species behave. That is the difference between your people and mine. We had the power to exterminate you today, just as you exterminated Earth. We chose not to. Park turned to address the crowd, her voice amplified by translation devices. People of Zelthark Prime, your leaders committed terrible crimes in your name. They told you it was necessary. They told you it was for your protection. But they lied. They were not protecting you. They were protecting their own power. She pointed at Vex Thal and the other commanders. These people will face trial before a galactic court. They will answer for every species they exterminated, every life they destroyed. If found guilty, they will be punished. But that punishment will be decided by law, not by mob violence, not by revenge, by law. A Zelthark civilian stepped forward, an older female with scarred scales. Why? Why show us mercy when we showed you none? Park met her eyes. Because mercy is not weakness. Because justice is not the same as revenge. And because if humanity becomes genocidal, then Earth truly died 100 years ago. Everything my people stood for, all our art and music and dreams, would mean nothing if we returned to the galaxy as destroyers. She turned back to Vex Thul. You will surrender yourself and your command staff to human custody. You will be transported to the Celestial Forum, where species from across the galaxy will judge you, and your people will begin the hard work of rebuilding their civilization on principles of peace instead of conquest. Vex Thul stared at her for a long moment, then slowly bowed his head in defeat. As human Marines took custody of the Zelthark leaders, Park looked up at the scarred moon and thought of her father, thought of Earth, thought of 11 billion people who died believing humanity would endure. She hoped she had made them proud. 5 years had passed since the human fleet appeared above Zelthark Prime. 5 years since the galaxy learned the truth about the Zelthark Dominion's crimes. 5 years since humanity chose justice over revenge. Admiral Park Ji-woo, now retired from military service, stood in what had once been Seoul. The ruins stretched for kilometers in every direction. Silent monuments to the billions who died here. But something new grew among the ruins. Life. She knelt and touched the soft green shoots pushing through scorched concrete. Real Earth vegetation. Grown from genetic samples that humanity had carried into exile. Trees, grass, flowers, all the species that had made Earth beautiful. Scientists said it would take a century to restore the planet's ecosystem, 2 centuries to rebuild the cities, perhaps 3 before Earth could sustain billions again. But it was a start. The restoration is ahead of schedule, Ambassador Kira said, walking up behind Park. The Etherian diplomat had become a regular visitor to Earth, overseeing her government's contribution to the reclamation project. It was, Kira often said, the least they could do. Your people have been generous, Park replied, standing and brushing dirt from her hands. At this rate, we will have breathable atmosphere restored in 80 years instead of 100. We owe you far more than technology and resources, Kira said quietly. We owe you an apology that can never be adequate. We stood by while your world burned. We were cowards. Park had heard similar words from dozens of species over the past 5 years. Some meant it genuinely. Others simply feared human power. She had learned to tell the difference. You have been working to make amends, Park said. That counts for something. They walked together through the ruins, following paths that would one day be streets again. Engineers had marked out the new city plan, preserving the major landmarks that survived the bombardment as memorials. The framework for a massive monument was being constructed where the old city center once stood, a memorial to the 11 billion dead. How is the trial proceeding? Park asked. Slower than anyone hoped, Kira admitted. Vex Thul and the High Command are facing charges from 17 different species. The legal proceedings are incredibly complex. But progress is being made. The Interstellar Justice Tribunal is finally functioning as you envisioned. The tribunal had been humanity's gift to the galaxy, a permanent court with authority to try crimes against sapient life. Every species contributed judges. No single power could control it. It was imperfect, but it was something. A line in the sand, stating that genocide would no longer be tolerated. What about the Zelthark people? Park asked. How are they adapting? Better than expected. Their new government is young and fragile, but genuinely committed to reform. They have been cooperating with tribunal investigations, exposing the crimes their old leadership tried to hide. Many Zelthark citizens are angry, feeling betrayed by everything they were taught, but they are trying to build something better. Park nodded. That was all anyone could ask. Redemption was not quick or easy. It took generations, but it was possible. A shuttle passed overhead, heading toward the landing field outside the ruins. Park checked her schedule. That will be Colonel Lee. He is supposed to brief me on the Sentinel initiative. Kira's antennae twitched with curiosity. How is that project developing? See for yourself. They made their way to the landing field. where Colonel Lee Sung-min waited beside his shuttle. He smiled when he saw Park. Though the expression still carried shadows, Lee had struggled more than most with humanity's choice of mercy over vengeance. But he had stayed loyal, leading the Sentinel Initiative with grim determination. "Admiral," he said, using her old rank as he always did. "Ambassador, thank you for agreeing to this meeting." "You said it was important," Park replied. "It is." Lee activated a holographic display from his wrist device. The Sentinel fleet is now fully operational. 30 ships crewed by mixed species teams, humans, Aetherians, Vrellans, even some Zelthark volunteers who wanted to make amends. Our mandate is clear. Protect vulnerable species from aggression, respond to humanitarian crises, and ensure the mistakes of the past are not repeated. The display showed various ships and crew compositions. Park felt a surge of pride. This was what humanity's sacrifice had bought. Not dominance, but cooperation. Not revenge, but protection for the weak. "We have already completed 2 successful missions," Lee continued. "We stopped a pirate fleet that was raiding Greshkin colonies, and we evacuated 30,000 Planari refugees from a natural disaster. The galaxy is watching us closely, Admiral. They are starting to believe humanity truly means what we say." "Good," Park said simply. Lee hesitated, then spoke more quietly. "I wanted to thank you for stopping me 5 years ago, for showing me the difference between justice and murder. I was so angry back then, so certain that strength meant destroying our enemies. But I was wrong." "You were not wrong to be angry," Park said gently. "You were wrong about how to channel that anger. There is a difference." 10. I see that now. Working with other species, protecting people instead of killing them, it feels right. It feels like what humanity should be doing among the stars. Like what we would have been doing if Earth had never been attacked. Park smiled. "Perhaps. Or perhaps we needed to experience loss to understand the value of what we were protecting. I wish it had not happened that way. But we cannot change the past. We can only build the future." A young human approached them, barely 20 years old. She wore a technician's uniform and carried a data pad. "Admiral Park? I am sorry to interrupt, but the planting ceremony is scheduled to begin in 20 minutes. They are waiting for you." "Of course," Park said. "Tell them I am on my way." As the technician left, Kira asked, "Planting ceremony?" "The first trees in what will be New Seoul's Central Park," Park explained. "They wanted me to plant the first one, a symbolic gesture." "May we attend?" Lee asked. "I would like that." They made their way to the ceremony site, where hundreds of people had gathered: humans, Aetherians, Vrellans, and representatives from dozens of other species. All of them had contributed to Earth's restoration in some way. All of them wanted to be part of the healing. A small human child waited beside a freshly dug hole, holding a sapling that barely reached her waist. She looked nervous, clutching the young tree as if it might escape. Park approached her with a warm smile. "Hello. What is your name?" "Min Seo," the girl said shyly. "I am 6 years old. They told me I was born after the fleet came back. Is that true?" "It is true. You are part of the new generation. The ones who will grow up on Earth again." "Did you really see Earth before it died?" The question stabbed through Park's heart, as it always did. But she kept her voice steady. "I did. I was 7 years old. About your age. I remember trees, and grass, and birds, singing. I remember my father's garden, where he grew vegetables. It was beautiful. Will Earth be beautiful again?" Park looked around at the ruins, at the people gathered to witness this moment, at the green shoots pushing through dead soil. She thought about her father's smile, his certainty that life would continue. "Yes," she said firmly. "Earth will be beautiful again. Not the same as before. We can never have that back. But beautiful in a new way." a way that honors what was lost while building something worth protecting. She helped Minseo carry the sapling to the hole. Together, they lowered it into the soil and covered its roots. Park pressed the earth down gently, remembering how her father had taught her to plant seeds in his garden so many lifetimes ago. "This tree will outlive us all," Park told the child. "It will grow tall and strong. It will provide shade for future generations. And when people sit beneath its branches, maybe they will remember that humanity came back from extinction not with hatred, but with hope." The crowd applauded softly as Park and Minseo stepped back from the newly planted tree. Other people moved forward with their own saplings, beginning to fill what would become a forest. Life returning to dead ground, stubborn and inevitable. As the sun set over the ruins, painting the scarred landscape in orange and gold, Park stood with Kira and Lee, watching the ceremony. "The galaxy learned something important 5 years ago," Kira said. "That humanity is dangerous. Yes, but not in the way the Zelthark feared. You are dangerous because you refuse to give up, because you turn tragedy into determination, because you could have become destroyers and chose to become builders instead. We are just trying to survive," Park said. "Same as every species." "No," Lee corrected gently. "We are trying to live. There is a difference. Survival is what we did for 100 years in exile. Living is what we are doing now. Building, growing, forgiving, even when it is hard." Park watched Minseo laughing as she helped plant another tree, covered in dirt and completely happy. The child had never known the old Earth. She would grow up on this new version, carrying memories of today, the day humans began coming home. "My father would have liked this," Park said quietly. "He always believed humanity's best quality was not our strength or intelligence. It was our refusal to let tragedy define us. Our ability to find hope in ashes and build something beautiful from ruins." "He sounds like a wise man," Kira said. "He was. And he was right." Park smiled, feeling tears on her face, but not bothering to wipe them away. "The Zelthark took Earth from us. They killed billions. They drove us into exile and hunted us across the stars. But they did not destroy us. They could not destroy what we were, what we believed in. And now we are back. Not as conquerors, not as killers, but as the species my father believed we could be. The ones who turn hatred into justice and revenge into restoration." The last light faded from the sky, and the first stars became visible through Earth's slowly healing atmosphere. Park looked up at them, at the vast galaxy that had once feared humanity and now watched with cautious hope. "Welcome home," she whispered to the stars, "to the billions of dead, to her father's memory. Welcome home." And in the gathering darkness, surrounded by friends and former enemies working together to heal a wounded world, Park finally felt the burden of 100 years begin to lift. The war was over. The revenge was complete. Not through destruction, but through the simple, stubborn act of refusing to become monsters. Humanity had survived. And in surviving, they had taught the galaxy a lesson that would echo for generations. That true strength lies not in the ability to destroy, but in the courage to show mercy. That justice and vengeance are not the same. That the best revenge is to live well, to build beautifully, and to prove that hope is stronger than hatred. Earth would rise again, humanity would endure, and the galaxy would be better for it.
Ambassador Min-Jun Kim walked through the crystal corridors of Nexus Prime, his steps echoing against walls that sparkled with alien technology. For 15 years, this place had been his second home. The massive space station orbited no planet, floating in neutral space where all species could meet as equals. At least, that was what Min-Jun had believed. He nodded to a Vrex diplomat as he passed. The insectoid creature clicked its mandibles in greeting, its compound eyes reflecting the station's lights. Min-Jun had learned to read their body language years ago. The Vrex had seemed like friends. So had the Thalons, the Zeraf, and all the others who made up the Galactic Council. Today was the Grand Assembly, where humanity would finally receive full voting status in the Council. Earth had worked hard for this moment, proving themselves peaceful and cooperative. They had shared their art, their music, their technology. They had opened their worlds to alien visitors. They had done everything right. Min-jun entered his temporary quarters to review the ceremony details one final time. As he sat at his desk, his datapad chimed with an incoming file. The sender was listed as anonymous. His security training told him to delete it immediately, but something made him hesitate. He opened it. The file contained thousands of documents, all marked with the highest security classifications from different alien governments. Min-jun's hands began to shake as he read. He went through page after page, his stomach twisting tighter with each word. It was called the Harvest Accord, signed secretly by every major species in the Galactic Council, signed 12 years ago, just 3 years after humanity had made first contact. The document outlined a plan in cold, clinical language. Humanity would be designated a slave race for the entire galaxy. Min-jun read the justifications they had written. Humans were intelligent enough for complex tasks, but young enough to have no powerful allies. They bred quickly and adapted to different environments easily. Their bodies were strong and their minds were clever. They would make perfect workers for the dangerous jobs that other species did not want to do. The file showed how carefully they had planned everything. The friendly diplomatic missions had been intelligence gathering. Every cultural exchange had included medical teams studying human biology, looking for weaknesses. The alien merchants who had visited Earth's colonies were mapping populations and defenses. The Council had encouraged humans to spread out to different worlds, not because they welcomed humanity's growth, but because scattered colonies would be easier to attack and capture. 16 species had signed the accord. Not just a few criminal organizations or rogue governments. Every major civilization in the Council had agreed that humanity should be enslaved. The Vrex had proposed it. The Thalons had provided the legal framework. The Zareth had designed the weapons. Species that Min-jun had called friends had spent years planning to chain his people. The documents showed detailed plans for the attack. Simultaneous strikes on all 40 human colonies, stun weapons and neural disruptors specifically calibrated for human nervous systems. Transport ships ready to carry billions of captives to slave markets across the galaxy. The attack would begin within days, right after the Grand Assembly ceremony. They wanted humanity relaxed and celebrating, completely unprepared. Min-jun sat frozen, trying to process what he had learned. Every smile had been a lie. Every treaty had been a trap. The galaxy did not see humans as partners or friends. They saw property, resources to be harvested like minerals or timber. His hands moved almost automatically, copying the files to a secure quantum transmitter hidden in his quarters. Earth needed to know. Earth needed to prepare. But even as he worked, Min-jun realized how hopeless it seemed. Humanity had scattered across 40 worlds. Their military was decent, but designed for defense, not for fighting 16 species at once. How could they possibly survive? The door to his quarters suddenly opened. 3 Vrex security officers entered, their weapons already drawn. Behind them stood Ambassador Zethan, the Vrex who had mentored Min-jun for years, who had taught him about galactic politics and called him friend. "I am sorry you found that information," Zethan said, his translator making his clicking speech into flat, emotionless words. "You were not supposed to know until it was over. We wanted to spare you the fear." Min-jun backed away slowly. "Spare me? You were planning to enslave my entire species." "Not enslave. Employ," Zethan corrected. "You would have been cared for, fed, housed. Your role in galactic society would have been clear and purposeful. Many of your kind would have found satisfaction in their work." "We would have been slaves," Min-jun said, his voice cold. "Property. You were going to destroy everything we built. Zythan's mandibles twitched in what might have been sadness or might have been nothing at all. Your species is young. You have no ancient claims, no historical territory. The galaxy was divided long before you reached the stars. There is no room for another sovereign power, but there is always need for workers. We were giving humanity a place in the galactic order. By taking away our freedom. Freedom is overrated by young species, Zythan said. Security and purpose matter more. In time, your grandchildren would have understood. The Vrex security officers moved closer. Min-Jun knew he had seconds at most. His hand slammed down on the transmitter button. The device hummed, then exploded in a shower of sparks as one of the officers shot it. But the transmission had already begun. The files were racing toward Earth through quantum channels, faster than any ship could follow. "It is done," Min-Jun said quietly. "Earth knows everything." Zythan's body language shifted to something Min-Jun could not read. "Then the harvest must begin early. We had hoped to avoid military conflict. Your warning will change nothing except the casualty count." Min-Jun was taken to a detention cell deep in Nexus Prime. Hours later, through the small window, he saw the fleets gathering. Hundreds of ships from 16 different species, all preparing to jump to human space. The largest military force ever assembled by the Galactic Council. As the fleets vanished into hyperspace, Min-Jun pressed his hand against the cold wall and whispered a prayer. Not for himself, but for the billions who had no idea what was coming, for the children who would wake up tomorrow in chains, for the civilization that had reached for the stars with hope and would find only betrayal. The galaxy had made its choice. Now, humanity would have to make theirs. And Min-Jun wondered, trapped and helpless, what choice his species could possibly make against such overwhelming power. Commander Park Ji-woo stood on the bridge of the defense station orbiting New Busan Colony when the first alien ships appeared. One moment, the space around the colony was empty. The next, 300 vessels materialized in perfect attack formation. Vrex cruisers, Thalon warships, Zeref carriers, and a dozen other species he recognized from diplomatic files. "All hands to battle stations," he said calmly, though his heart hammered in his chest. "Launch all fighters. Activate planetary shields." The warning from Ambassador Min-Jun had arrived just 6 hours earlier. 6 hours to prepare for what the message called the harvest. 6 hours to ready defenses against 16 species who had spent years planning this attack. It was not nearly enough time. Park's wife and 2 daughters lived on New Busan's surface. He had sent them to the emergency shelters as soon as the warning came. Now he could only hope those shelters would be enough. The alien fleet did not bother with communication or demands. They simply attacked. Weapons fire lit up space as human ships moved to intercept. Park's forces fought with desperate courage. But they were overwhelmed. For every alien ship destroyed, 3 more took its place. The aliens used weapons Park had never seen before. Blue energy beams that passed through shields and disabled ship systems instantly. Missiles that split into dozens of smaller projectiles, each one tracking a different target. Most terrifying were the neural disruptors, designed specifically to affect human biology. Any crew member caught in their field collapsed unconscious within seconds. Park watched his fleet die around him. The defense station shuddered as alien weapons tore through its hull. Emergency alarms screamed throughout the corridors. Through the viewport, he saw landing craft descending toward New Busan's cities. Thousands of them, like a swarm of locusts. "Sir, we have to evacuate," his second officer said. "Not yet," Park said. "Route all remaining power to the station's main cannon. Target their command ship. That will leave life support with no backup power. Do it." The station's massive cannon fired one last time, its beam cutting through space and punching through a Vrex dreadnought's shields. The alien ship broke apart in a beautiful, terrible explosion. Park felt no satisfaction. It was one ship among hundreds. The station's power failed. Emergency lights flickered on, casting everything in red shadows. Park and his crew made it to the escape pods, launching away from the dying station just before it exploded behind them. As his pod descended toward New Busan, Park saw the harvest happening below. Alien soldiers moved through the streets with brutal efficiency. Humans who resisted were stunned unconscious. Families were separated, loaded onto different transport ships. The aliens had done this before on other worlds. Their tactics were perfect and merciless. Park's pod crashed in the outskirts of New Busan's capital city. He and his surviving crew armed themselves with whatever weapons they could find and tried to reach the shelter where his family had gone. But the aliens were everywhere. He saw neighbors he had known for years dragged from their homes. He saw children crying for parents who could not reach them. He saw the neural disruptors used on crowds of civilians, leaving hundreds of unconscious humans stacked like cargo. A Thalon soldier spotted Park's group and opened fire. They fought back, but their weapons were meant for human opponents. The aliens' armor shrugged off their bullets. Park watched 3 of his crew die before they managed to bring the creature down with concentrated fire at its joints. They reached the shelter to find it had already been breached. Alien soldiers were methodically removing the humans hiding inside, scanning each one with strange devices before sorting them into groups. Park pushed forward, searching desperately for his family. He found them near the back. His wife, Soo-jin, held their 2 daughters close. When she saw Park, relief flooded her face for just a moment before fear returned. An insectoid Vrex soldier was approaching them, scanner in hand. Park raised his weapon, but a neural disruptor blast from behind dropped him to his knees. His body would not obey his commands. He could only watch as the Vrex scanned his family and marked them with glowing tags. The tags designated them for transport to different locations, his wife to one ship, his daughters to another. "No," Park tried to say, but his mouth would not work. "Please, no." Soo-jin looked at him, tears streaming down her face. She mouthed the words, "I love you," as aliens dragged her away. His daughters screamed for their mother, then for him, as different soldiers carried them toward the transport ships. Park lay paralyzed on the shelter floor while the harvest continued around him. Hours passed before the neural disruptor's effects faded enough for him to move. By then, the aliens were gone. New Busan's streets were empty. 50 million humans had lived on this colony. Now there were perhaps a few 100,000 left, those the aliens had deemed too old or too sick to be worth taking. Similar scenes played out across all of humanity's colonies. New Hope fell in 2 days. Armstrong Station lasted 3. The colony on Tau Ceti fought for a week before being overwhelmed. Everywhere the story was the same. Human forces fought bravely but were crushed by superior numbers and technology specifically designed to counter their defenses. Earth itself remained free, but barely. The combined alien fleets formed a blockade, cutting off all supply lines and communications. 5 billion humans had been captured in the first 2 weeks of the harvest. Earth's remaining population of 10 billion could only watch in horror as images of slave markets reached them through hacked alien channels. The markets operated openly on a dozen different worlds. Humans were displayed like livestock, sorted by age, health, and skills. Buyers bid on individual humans or bought them in bulk. Strong men went to mining operations on airless worlds. Skilled workers went to factories. Women and children were bought by wealthy families as domestic servants. The prices varied, but all were surprisingly cheap. Humanity's value had been calculated and found to be low. In the emergency bunker beneath Earth's capital, the planetary government held an endless session. Representatives from every nation argued about what to do. Some wanted to negotiate, to surrender peacefully in exchange for better treatment of the enslaved humans. Others wanted to keep fighting despite the impossible odds. General Yoon Min-seok, commander of Earth's Defense Force, listened to the arguments for 3 days before he finally spoke. "Negotiation is pointless," he said. "They do not see us as people. They see us as resources. Fighting conventionally is also pointless. We cannot match their numbers or technology." "Then what do you suggest?" the council leader asked. "Surrender." "No," Yoon said quietly. "I suggest we stop fighting like we have something to lose. Our people are already enslaved. Our colonies are already destroyed. We have nothing left to protect except Earth itself. And if Earth falls, humanity ends anyway." He placed a data chip on the table. "For 15 years, while we played diplomat and friend to the galaxy, we also prepared for the possibility of betrayal. We have weapons the Council has never seen. Weapons we hoped never to use. They are terrible weapons, cruel weapons. Weapons that do not just win battles but erase entire species." The room fell silent. "If we use these weapons, there is no going back," Yoon continued. "The galaxy will see us as monsters. They may unite to destroy us completely, but they will also return our people. They will beg us to stop, and then they will never ever threaten humanity again." The vote took hours. When it finished, the result was unanimous. Earth would not surrender. Earth would not negotiate. Earth would show the galaxy what happened when you tried to chain humanity. Commander Park Ji-woo, back on Earth and promoted despite his failure to save New Busan, received his new orders directly from General Yoon. He read them 3 times before he believed what they said. "Are we really going to do this?" he asked. "They took everything from us," Yoon said. "Now we take everything from them." Park thought of his wife and daughters, somewhere in the galaxy, wearing slave collars and serving alien masters. He thought of the 5 billion other humans suffering the same fate. He thought of the children who would be born into slavery, who would never know freedom. "When do we begin?" he asked. The hidden military stations activated throughout the solar system, emerging from behind moons and asteroids where they had waited for 15 years. Commander Park Ji-woo stood on the bridge of the dreadnought Righteous Fury, one of 20 massive warships that had been built in secret while humanity smiled and shared culture with the galaxy. These were not defensive vessels. Every system, every weapon, every piece of technology had one purpose: overwhelming offensive power. The ships did not carry names like Hope or Unity. They carried names like Vengeance, Retribution, and Extinction, because humanity had learned what the galaxy really thought of them. "All ships report ready," the communications officer said. Park looked at the display showing his fleet. Around him were the other 19 dreadnoughts, each carrying weapons that would make the Galactic Council wish they had simply left humanity alone. Behind them came hundreds of cruisers, destroyers, and carrier ships loaded with fighters. This was not Earth's entire military. This was just the first wave. "Set course for the Rex homeworld," Park commanded. "Maximum speed." The fleet jumped into hyperspace, crossing the galaxy in 3 days. When they emerged at the edge of the Rex system, alarms immediately sounded on every Rex station and ship. The insectoid species had grown comfortable in their power. They had enslaved dozens of species over thousands of years. They had led the conspiracy against humanity. Now they would be the first to pay. The Rex defense fleet moved to intercept, over 500 ships protecting their home system. Park did not bother with threats or warnings. He simply gave the order to fire. The human weapons were nothing like what the galaxy had seen before. Particle beams that burned through shields like they did not exist, missiles that could track targets through hyperspace jumps, and most devastating biological weapons that humanity had spent 15 years perfecting. During the cultural exchanges, humanity had obtained samples of every major species' genetics. They had done this carefully, politely, under the guise of medical research and scientific cooperation. The aliens had freely shared, never imagining what humans would do with that information. Now that research bore terrible fruit. The first wave of missiles that hit the Vrex homeworld did not carry explosives. They carried engineered pathogens designed specifically for Vrex biology. The diseases spread through their hive connections, jumping from one insectoid to another with perfect efficiency. Within 24 hours, every major population center on the Vrex homeworld was infected. The Vrex had no natural immunity. The diseases attacked their respiratory systems, their nervous systems, their ability to communicate through pheromones. The victims died in agony, their hive minds fracturing and screaming across their neural networks. The death of one spread panic and pain to all others connected to them. Park watched the sensor readings as the Vrex population crashed. 17 billion lives. He felt nothing. They had planned to enslave his entire species. They had torn his family apart. This was justice. The Vrex defense fleet, confused and horrified by what was happening to their homeworld, tried to mount a counterattack. Human ships tore through them methodically. The battles were not even close. Humanity's weapons had been designed by people who knew they would only get one chance. Every shot counted. Every system worked perfectly. Within 72 hours, the Vrex homeworld was silent. The once proud species that had dominated the galactic slave trade for millennia was reduced to scattered survivors on distant colonies, all of them knowing their civilization was finished. The galaxy watched in horror. Every species monitored the destruction, seeing the recordings that humanity deliberately broadcast. Park made sure they all understood the message. This is what happens when you threaten humanity. The human fleet did not stop. They jumped to the Thalon ocean worlds next. The aquatic species had provided the legal framework for the Harvest Accord, writing the laws that declared humanity could be property. They lived in vast underwater cities on 12 different planets, their civilization built in the depths of alien seas. Humanity showed them the depths of human fury instead. The weapons dropped into Thalon oceans were not bombs. They were thermal devices that superheated water on a molecular level. The seas began to boil. Steam rose in massive clouds that choked the atmosphere. The Thalon fled their cities, but there was nowhere to go. Their entire civilization depended on liquid water, and humanity was taking it away. Some Thalon tried to evacuate to space stations, but human fighters hunted them down. Others tried to surrender, begging for mercy. Park's response was broadcast across all channels. You gave our children no mercy. You sold them like animals. We will give you exactly what you gave us, nothing. The Thalon worlds became dead, dry rocks orbiting their stars. Another civilization erased from the galaxy. The Zeref tried to prepare defenses when they saw the human fleet approaching their crystalline habitats. The silicon-based life forms had designed the neural disruptors used in the harvest. They had studied human biology and created weapons specifically to enslave humanity efficiently. They thought their unique biology would protect them from human weapons. They were wrong. Humanity had studied them too. The resonance weapons that human ships fired were calibrated to the exact frequency of Zeref crystalline structures. The weapons caused the aliens' bodies to vibrate at frequencies they could not withstand. The Zeref literally shattered, their crystalline forms breaking apart into dust. Their habitats, beautiful structures that had taken centuries to grow, crumbled as the resonance weapons swept through them. In the cold vacuum of space, the Zeref died silently, their civilization's achievements turning to glittering debris. 10 species watched the destruction of 3 major civilizations and immediately began returning their human captives. Transport ships raced toward human space. Their cargo holds full of freed slaves, their governments desperately broadcasting apologies and surrender. But 6 species refused. They believed humanity was bluffing, that Earth could not possibly sustain this level of warfare. They thought the moral cost would make humans stop. They believed there had to be limits to human fury. They were wrong about all of it. General Yoon contacted Park from Earth with new orders. The 6 who refuse to return our people have their coordinates. The Krell, the Morphians, the Dexari, the Solvorians, the Kryn, and the Heptar. Show them no mercy. Make it clear to the entire galaxy what the price of defying humanity truly is. Park thought about his daughters. Intelligence reports suggested they had been sold to a Krell military family as servants. His wife was somewhere in Morphian space. He had received recordings of the slave markets where they had been displayed and sold. The recordings were meant to break human morale. Instead, they broke something else in Park, something that might have once been called mercy. "Understood," he said. "We will erase them." Ambassador Min-Jun Kim, freed when the council collapsed in panic, managed to get a message to Park before the next attack began. "Commander, please. 10 species have surrendered. They are returning our people. The galaxy understands the message. We can stop now. We can show that humanity is better than this." Park read the message and sent back a single sentence. "They would have enslaved our grandchildren. There will be no next time." The human fleet split into 6 task forces, each assigned to erase one of the refusing species from existence. They carried weapons even more terrible than what they had already used. Nanite swarms programmed with specific genetic targets, gravity weapons that could collapse a planet's core, stellar torpedoes that could destabilize a star and turn it into a system-killing bomb. As the fleets jumped toward their targets, Park stood alone on his bridge and looked at an image of his family from before the harvest. His daughters smiling, his wife laughing, all of them free and happy. "I will bring you home," he whispered to the image. "No matter what I have to become to do it." Behind him, his crew prepared the weapons that would kill billions more. They worked in silence, their faces showing no emotion. They had all lost someone in the harvest. They had all seen the slave markets. They had all made the same choice Park had. Mercy was for species who deserved it. The Galactic Council had proven they did not. The galaxy was about to learn that humanity remembered every wrong and repaid every debt, with interest that would be measured in extinction. The Krell had built their civilization on conquest and military pride. They were warriors who had defeated every species they had encountered in battle. They had 3 homeworlds, each one a fortress covered in weapons and defended by fleets that had never known defeat. When they heard humanity was coming, they laughed and prepared for war. Commander Park Ji-woo's task force arrived at the first Krell world with a simple message broadcast on all frequencies. "Return every human in your possession within 1 hour or this world dies." The Krell High Commander responded with mockery. "Come and take them, if you can. We do not fear children playing with weapons they do not understand." Park checked the countdown timer. When it reached 0, he gave the order. "Fire stellar torpedoes, all 3 stars." The Krell system had 3 suns, a rare configuration that made their worlds warm and bright. The torpedoes that struck each star were small devices, but they carried compressed dark matter cores that destabilized stellar fusion. The reaction would take time, but it was irreversible. The Krell did not realize what humanity had done until their stars began to flicker. Scientists across all 3 worlds detected the anomaly simultaneously and understood with growing horror. Their suns were dying, not in millions of years, but in hours. Panic spread through the Krell civilization. Their massive defense fleets suddenly had no purpose. You could not shoot a dying star. You could not defend against physics itself. They had minutes to evacuate 3 entire worlds, and nowhere near enough ships to do it. Park watched on his displays as the Krell abandoned their military pride and begged for evacuation assistance. He watched families scramble for escape pods. He watched children crying in the arms of parents who knew there was no escape. He watched all of it and felt nothing. "Sir, they are trying to surrender. his communications officer said. "They say they will return the humans immediately." "Too late," Park said. "They had their chance." The three suns collapsed within 6 hours of each other. Each collapse created a shock wave that sterilized every planet in the system. The Krell homeworlds, fortresses that had stood for 10,000 years, became chunks of burned rock orbiting dead stars. 400 billion Krell died. Their scattered colonies across the galaxy suddenly found themselves alone, their civilization's heart torn out. The Morphean Collective tried to hide when they learned what happened to the Krell. They were shapeshifters who lived in the Great Veil Nebula, their colonies scattered among gas clouds where sensors could not easily find them. They thought the nebula would protect them. Humanity found them anyway. Human ships had been built with sensors specifically designed to track the Morpheans' unique energy signatures. Every colony was located within a day. Then the human fleet deployed weapons that ignited the nebula's gases. The Veil Nebula burned. Trillions of tons of hydrogen and helium caught fire in a chain reaction that spread across light years. The beautiful clouds that had been home to the Morpheans became a blazing hell. The colonies tried to evacuate, but the fire moved faster than their ships. The Morphean Collective, which had existed for 50,000 years, died in 3 days of fire. Park received a message from his intelligence officers. They had located his wife. She was on a Morphean station that had been deep in the nebula. The station was gone now, consumed by the fire that humanity had set. He stood on his bridge, staring at the burning nebula on the display, and felt something crack inside him. Su Jin was dead. Not killed by their enemies, but by his own weapons. He had set the fire that killed her. His second officer approached cautiously. "Sir, the Morphean colonies are destroyed. Should we proceed to the next target?" Park wanted to scream. He wanted to collapse. He wanted to undo everything. But his daughters were still alive somewhere, still enslaved. He could not stop now. "Proceed," he said, his voice empty. The Dexari tried to fight conventionally. They marshaled their fleets and met humanity in open battle near their industrial worlds. It was a mistake. Human weapons tore through their ships like paper. The nanite swarms were released on their planets, programmed to consume Dexari genetic material specifically. The Dexari soldiers on the surface watched in horror as the gray swarm descended from orbit. The nanites consumed everything organic that matched Dexari DNA. Plants they had brought from their homeworld, their food supplies, their bodies. The swarm left buildings and technology untouched, but every Dexari on those worlds simply dissolved into component atoms. Clean, efficient, absolute. The Solvorians surrendered after seeing what happened to the Dexari. They broadcast their surrender across every channel, returning the humans they held and begging for mercy. Park's fleet arrived at their worlds anyway. "We do not accept surrender," Park broadcast to the terrified population. "You had your chance. This is not war. This is extinction." Gravity weapons struck the Solvorian homeworld. The planet's core began to collapse. Earthquakes shattered cities. Volcanoes erupted across the surface. The planet was destroying itself from within, and there was nothing anyone could do to stop it. The Solvorians died screaming, their world cracking apart beneath them. The Kryn tried to flee into dark space, beyond the mapped galaxy where they thought humanity could not follow. Human hunter ships pursued them into the void. There was no hiding, no escape. Every Kryn colony ship was found and destroyed. Every refugee station was eliminated. Humanity did not leave survivors to rebuild. The Heptar were last. They were aquatic telepaths who had never personally harmed any humans, but had voted in favor of the Harvest Accord. They sent Ambassador Min Jun desperate pleas, arguing they had only followed the Council's lead, that they did not deserve extinction for one vote. Min Jun brought their pleas to Park. "Commander, the Heptar are asking for mercy. They released their human captives weeks ago. They have tried to make amends." Did they show mercy to those captives when they voted to enslave them? Park asked. Did they care that families would be torn apart? That children would grow up in chains? No. But we can choose to be better than them. We can show the galaxy that humanity has limits, that we punish but do not genocide. Park thought of his daughters, still lost somewhere in the galaxy. He thought of his wife, dead in fire he had set. He thought of 5 billion humans who had been treated like animals. The galaxy needs to learn that threatening humanity has consequences that last forever, Park said. No species that supported the harvest can be allowed to survive. If even one remains, others might think they could try again someday. Our grandchildren deserve a galaxy that fears humanity too much to ever consider enslaving them. At what cost? Min-jun asked. How many billions have we killed? How many civilizations have we erased? When does it end? When it is done, Park said. The human fleet arrived at the Heptar homeworld. The telepathic species broadcast their last thoughts across the galaxy as the weapons struck. Fear, regret, pleading, then silence. 4 species had been completely erased from existence. Trillions dead. Their homeworlds were lifeless or destroyed. Their cultures were gone. Their